Hello everyone. Before we start, make sure to like and subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment with where you're from and what time you're watching. That way, YouTube will keep showing you stories just like this one. Now, let's begin. I spent the first week of September in Istanbul with my fiancé, Ethan. It was supposed to be one of those trips you look back on when you're older. Markets buzzing with people, late-night food runs, endless walking, and just getting lost in a city that didn't care who you were. On our second-to-last day, Ethan wasn't feeling well, so I went to the Rami M. Koç Museum alone in the late afternoon. I lost track of time in the maritime section, and by the time I left, the sky was already deep blue, with that faint golden layer clinging to the edges of the buildings. I remember texting Ethan that I'd be back soon and looking around for a taxi since I didn't want to risk the tram at that hour. The area was quiet, just a couple of taxis nearby and only one with a driver inside. He looked up, nodded, and I got in. The driver was older, maybe late 50s, with a flat cap and a dark red windbreaker zipped up, even though it was still warm out. He didn't say much, just asked, "Taksim?" And I said yes, relieved that he understood. The car smelled faintly of citrus and something chemical, like carpet cleaner. I didn't notice right away that the meter wasn't on. I figured maybe they did things differently here, or he'd turn it on in a bit. We drove in silence for maybe 15 minutes, the roads a little too empty for the hour. Then we passed a street I recognized from the way in, and instead of turning right toward the center, he went left, toward the docks. I leaned forward a little and asked him why we weren't going toward Taksim. He glanced at me in the rearview mirror and said, "Shorter this way, less traffic." His English was basic but clear. I looked down at his phone mounted to the dash. It was black, off completely. No GPS, no map, no music. I asked if he could turn it on. He just muttered, "Battery dead." Then I realized something else. The meter still wasn't running. I asked him about it directly, trying to stay polite, and he said again, "No problem, I know price." That's when something in me started paying more attention. Not panicked, not yet, but alert. Like when you suddenly realize you forgot to lock your door and you're lying in bed. The buildings started thinning out. Instead of neon signs and cafes, there were long fences, warehouses, shuttered factories, places that looked asleep even during the day. We were heading into what looked like an industrial district, the kind you only see from highways or maps. I looked at my phone and saw the signal bars drop until it just said "no service." That's when I asked him to stop. Just like that. "Please stop. I want to get out here." He didn't even blink. Didn't look at me. Just kept driving, hands steady on the wheel, eyes ahead. That's when my stomach truly sank. I didn't want to start yelling. I didn't know if he spoke more English than he let on, and I wasn't sure how things worked legally in Turkey. But I repeated myself louder this time. "Stop the car, I said I want to get out." He finally glanced back at me, not angry, just blank, like I was background noise. He made a slow right turn down a road that dipped under an overpass. There were no other cars. No lights. Just rows of shipping containers stacked on one side and tall metal fences on the other. The road narrowed. I remember thinking how quiet it had gotten. Not city quiet, dead quiet. Even the sound of the engine felt dampened, like we'd crossed into a different layer of the city that no one talked about. My mind went into overdrive. I mentally traced the small can of pepper spray in my purse, wondering if I could actually use it. I checked the door lock, manual, and it wasn't engaged. I could jump out at the next stop if there was one. But we weren't stopping. He kept going, slow and steady, like he had all the time in the world. Then something strange happened. He reached forward, opened his glove box, and pulled out what looked like a folded piece of paper. He glanced at it briefly, didn't show it to me, and put it back. I didn't understand what that meant, but it made my chest tighten. It didn't feel like he was just avoiding traffic anymore. It felt like he was following something, a plan. I thought about calling Ethan even without service. Maybe the call would go through if I got lucky, but I didn't want the driver to know I was panicking. I typed out a message anyway, just in case. Something like, "Taxi driver isn't going toward hotel. I don't feel safe. Please call someone." Then I hit send, knowing it wouldn't go out yet, but praying maybe it would later. That's when we passed a small building that looked like some kind of auto repair place. Completely closed, lights off, metal shutter halfway down. He slowed the car a little and pulled over. Not all the way, just enough that the car wasn't in the middle of the road anymore. My heart was racing so hard I felt it in my throat. He reached for the gear shift, put the car in park, and just sat there. For a few seconds, neither of us moved. I was holding my bag in my lap so tightly that I dug my nails into the strap without noticing. Then he turned around slowly, resting his arm on the back of the passenger seat. "We wait here, then I take you." His voice was calm. I said, "Wait for what?" And he just looked at me like the question didn't make sense. My mouth was dry. Every instinct I had was screaming to run. But we were in the middle of nowhere. If I jumped out and ran, I didn't even know which way to go, or if someone else was coming to meet him. That was the first moment I thought, this might not end well. I scanned the street through the window, nothing but the shadows of fences and that dim repair shop. Then I noticed a figure in the side mirror. Way down the road, maybe 100 feet back, a man was walking toward us from the direction we'd come. Slowly. He had something in his hand, but I couldn't tell what. The driver didn't seem surprised. He looked back at the man, then forward again like this was routine. My body went cold. I didn't think. I just reached over, unlatched the door and bolted. I didn't even close it behind me. I ran across the street toward a narrow alley I'd seen between two fences. The kind of passage that looked like it wasn't meant for people. My only goal was distance, just get away. My legs were shaking, but I didn't stop. I didn't look back. The alley turned sharply behind one of the containers and led to a side road I hadn't seen from the car. I got lucky. A security van was parked near a metal gate, and two men in uniforms were standing outside smoking. I ran straight up to them, speaking in broken English and holding up my phone. One of them recognized taxi and help, and walked me inside what looked like a storage office. I showed him the text I'd tried to send Ethan and the direction I'd come from. He picked up a landline and started making calls. I didn't stop shaking the entire time. One of the other guards stepped outside, but the road where I'd come from was now empty. Eventually, a younger guy who spoke better English came in and asked what happened. I told him everything, trying to piece it together in order. He nodded slowly, then said something to the older guard, who shook his head. "That area has some problems," he told me. "Not safe at night. Very quiet. Not police often." They called me a legitimate taxi and insisted on riding with me back to the hotel. I didn't argue. When I finally got back, Ethan was pale and furious. He'd just gotten my message minutes before and was about to call the consulate. We sat in silence for a long time, both of us trying to understand what just happened. What would have happened if I hadn't run? I never found out who that man walking toward the taxi was, or why the driver brought me there, or what was on that folded paper he pulled from the glove box. I never reported it officially. Part of me felt stupid, like I wouldn't be taken seriously without proof. But I did remember one thing very clearly. As I was running, I heard the sound of the car door closing behind me. Not slamming, not someone chasing, just a soft click, like whoever was in control wasn't in a rush. Like it wasn't their first time doing something like that. That thought still bothers me more than anything. That and the fact that I was probably just one wrong decision away from never coming back. During the summer, I stayed with my cousin Andrei's family in Romania. They live in a small village about 2 hours from Cluj, the kind of place where the cows block the road, and the loudest sound at night is the wind moving through the grass. I wanted to get away from everything, school, my phone, the endless buzz of city life. For the most part, it was peaceful. Mornings were slow. filled with coffee so strong it made my hands shake, and afternoons were spent helping with small farm chores. Andre had a girlfriend in town, so he was gone a lot, which meant I had plenty of time to myself. That's how I ended up biking through the countryside alone one morning, thinking I'd take a few pictures, maybe find a shady spot to read. The farther I rode, the more isolated it got. Long, empty stretches of road with nothing but wheat fields, and the occasional crumbling barn. I wasn't paying much attention to where I was going until I turned down a narrow dirt path that curved between two hills. That's when I saw it. A house, if you could even still call it that. The roof sagged in the middle like a snapped spine, and every window I could see was covered in warped wooden boards, nailed tightly shut from the inside. Not like someone was trying to keep people out, but like something didn't want to get out. That part didn't hit me right away. At first, it just looked like another abandoned house, the kind that collapses into itself over the years. I left my bike in the grass and walked toward it. There was this weird silence around the place, like the fields themselves were holding their breath. Even the birds weren't chirping. Up close, the house was worse than I thought. The boards were old but solid, not weather-rotted like the rest of the place. I peeked through a gap near one of the windows, where the wood had split just enough to see inside. That's when I noticed the shoes. Dozens of tiny shoes. Some pairs, some single, all dusty and crooked on the floor like someone had tossed them into a pile and left them there. There were toys too. Wooden blocks, a doll missing its eyes, a plastic truck with no wheels. Everything was coated in a thick layer of dust like it hadn't been touched in years, but it didn't look forgotten. It looked arranged. I should have left then. I know that now. But I had this urge to see more. Not out of bravery, just that strange kind of pull you feel when something doesn't make sense, and your brain keeps trying to fill in the gaps. I walked around to the back, where a piece of the wall had rotted away, leaving just enough space to slide in. It smelled like mold and dry wood, but underneath that something sharper, sour, almost metallic. Inside, the light was dim and cut into slices by the slats in the boarded windows. Dust hung in the air like fog. Every step I took creaked loud enough to make me flinch. I stepped over a broken chair, then a pile of yellowed papers, and found myself in what must have been the living room. That's when I heard it, something shifting above me in the ceiling. Slow, dragging, like someone crawling. I froze and stared up at the ceiling. The boards were warped and stained with a wide, dark crack running across them. I couldn't see anything, but I didn't need to. The sound had been real. Something was up there. I held my breath, waiting to hear it again. At first, nothing. Then a soft knock, not like something fell, like knuckles. 1, 2, 3. Deliberate. My stomach tightened. I slowly backed toward the doorway I came in through, suddenly very aware of how dark the corners of the room were, how quiet everything had gotten again. I started to turn around, ready to get out, when I heard a second knock. This time, behind me. It didn't make sense. The first sound had come from the ceiling. The second was right at my level, like it came from one of the boarded windows. I turned my head, heart racing, and scanned the walls. One of the slats, just one, had shifted slightly. Not broken, not loose. Moved. There was a sliver of space now, like someone on the other side had tried to peek out, or in. I stepped back again and almost tripped over something. I looked down, and there was a tiny red shoe right by my foot. It hadn't been there before. It was clean, too clean, no dust, no dirt, just sitting there like it had been placed there for me to find. I couldn't explain it. I didn't want to. I turned and bolted for the gap in the wall, nearly slicing my arm on a nail as I squeezed back out. My bike was still there, thank God. I jumped on without even brushing the grass off my jeans and started pedaling like I was being chased. My legs burned and I didn't care. I didn't stop until I was back in the main road with fields and fences around me again and the house completely out of sight. I looked back once, just to make sure nothing was following me. Nothing was. But the house. From that distance it looked almost normal. Almost like it was waiting, watching. That night I didn't tell Andre. I didn't tell anyone. I lay in bed staring at the wood beams above me, every little creak making me flinch. I kept thinking about the red shoe, how it got there, why it was clean, and the knocks, those 3 little taps that sounded too intentional. At around 2 a.m., I finally started to drift off when I heard a soft thump against the window of the guest room. Just once. I sat up so fast I got lightheaded. The curtain was drawn, but the moonlight cast a perfect square of pale light on the floor. Nothing moved. I stayed awake until the sun came up. The next morning, I told myself it had to have been a bird, maybe a loose shutter. Anything but what it felt like. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd brought something back with me. When I got dressed, I checked my backpack before heading downstairs, and there it was, sitting right on top of my notebook. That same red shoe, still spotless. I didn't scream, but I dropped the whole bag like it burned. My first thought was that someone was messing with me. Maybe Andre. But when I asked him, he just looked confused and said he hadn't even come home last night. His girlfriend confirmed it. I took the shoe and buried it. I walked out to the edge of the woods behind the house, dug a shallow hole and tossed it in like it was radioactive. I didn't tell Andre why. I just said it was trash. He laughed it off. That night, the knocking came again. 2 knocks on the wall near my bed. I didn't move. Then a third, just like before. The weirdest part? They didn't sound threatening. They sounded patient, like someone checking in. Like a rhythm I was supposed to recognize. That was the moment it hit me. The house had been sealed from the inside. And whatever was there, whatever hadn't left, had learned how to follow. The next morning, I packed everything and made up a reason to leave early. I told Andre I got an email from my summer job back home, said I needed to be back earlier than planned. He didn't question it. I booked a flight out of Cluj that afternoon and didn't breathe easy until the plane was in the air. Nothing happened on the flight. Nothing happened after I landed. And for a while, I convinced myself it had been some elaborate prank, or that maybe I imagined half of it. Until a week later, when I got a package in the mail. No return address, just a tiny red shoe in a box wrapped in tissue paper. Clean, untouched. Like it had been waiting. That was 3 years ago. I've moved twice since then, changed my number, deleted all my old social media accounts. Nothing else has happened. Not really, but every now and then, always at night, I'll hear 3 soft knocks. On the wall, or sometimes the door. Always 3. I don't open anything. I don't look. And I never keep shoes near the window. I went to Peru with my parents during the summer before my senior year. It was our first time traveling outside the country together, and Lima was one of those places my mom had dreamed of since college. Food, color, history, the whole thing. I wasn't super into the museums or old churches, but the flea markets? That was different. Those places felt alive. Every stall seemed to vibrate with color and sound, like 100 different stories all spilling into one place. It was Saturday and the market was packed, layers of music overlapping, people calling out prices, smells of food frying from carts, dust in the air. That morning we were walking through the bigger market near Miraflores. My dad wandered off toward a guy selling vintage radios, and my mom was busy haggling over alpaca scarves. I saw this stall with handmade jewelry, really intricate stuff, not the cheap tourist stuff. Rings with jagged stones, bracelets made with tiny copper beads, earrings shaped like little suns and snakes. The vendor was this older man, probably late 50s, with a patchy gray beard and a thick accent. He saw me eyeing a necklace with an amber pendant and smiled like we were both in on some secret. "More pieces in back," he said, lifting the corner of a canvas divider behind the display. It wasn't really a room, just an enclosed area behind the tent, walled in with sheets of canvas and wooden crates stacked high. I hesitated. He noticed and said, "Very quick, special items. Not for everyone." It was loud out there, chaotic, and I couldn't see my parents through the crowds anymore. I figured they were still close. I stepped in. Inside it was cooler, dimmer, and smelled faintly of old fabric and some kind of oil, maybe polish for the jewelry. There was a low table with boxes on top, some open to reveal strange pieces. Rusted charms, tangled chains, a pair of bone earrings. He stepped in after me, dropped the canvas flap, and then I heard the click. I turned fast. He had locked it. Just a padlock and a latch, but it wasn't the kind of thing you could undo from the inside. Before I could say anything, he dragged a crate in front of the entrance. Then another. He didn't look angry or threatening. He didn't say anything at all. Just started going through one of the boxes like nothing had happened. I opened my mouth to yell, and I did. I screamed, loud, twice. But out there, with all the music and the shouting and the drum beat from that performer near the center of the plaza, it was like my voice didn't exist. No one came. My heart was thudding so hard I could feel it in my throat. I backed up until I bumped into one of the crates, trying to figure out if there was another way out. There wasn't. Just fabric walls, and beyond them only the muffled chaos of the market. He didn't look at me, didn't even acknowledge that I was panicking. He was sorting through his things like we were in the middle of a normal transaction. I said, "I need to go. My parents are looking for me." Nothing. He held up a small metal pendant, turned it in his hand under the light filtering through the canvas roof, and placed it back in the box. Tried to move one of the crates myself, but it was too heavy, packed with something solid, probably tools or merchandise. I pushed until my hands stung. The guy didn't move. Then he finally spoke, so low I barely heard it. "You're not ready yet." That sentence hit me like ice water. What the hell was that supposed to mean? I didn't know if he was crazy, or if this was some kind of robbery, or worse. I kept glancing at the flap, wondering if I could rip it open, if the padlock would hold. But even if I got through it, there was still a stack of crates in the way. My hands started shaking. After a minute that felt like 10, he stood up and walked toward a wooden shelf in the corner. I stepped back instinctively, bumping the table, which made a soft clatter as something metal hit the floor. I didn't even look to see what it was. He opened a drawer and took out what looked like a Polaroid. Old, curled at the edges. Then another. He laid them out on the table between us, face up. I couldn't help myself. I looked. There were 3 photos, all different girls, all around my age, each one standing in that same back area of the tent. One of them had the same amber necklace I'd been admiring. I asked, "Who are they?" He didn't answer, just kept looking at the pictures like he was remembering something personal. The weirdest part was that the girls weren't scared in the photos. They weren't smiling either, just blank, like they were waiting for something. One had her hands clasped behind her back like she'd been standing there for hours. I was breathing hard now, trying not to lose it completely. I didn't understand what he wanted, or what was happening, but I knew I couldn't stay in there another second. I stepped toward him fast, like I was going to grab the lock off the flap, but instead I reached for the side of the table and knocked it over as hard as I could. The table crashed onto its side, and the metal boxes on top went tumbling. One hit the guy square in the shin, and he let out a grunt of surprise, more annoyed than hurt. It gave me just enough time to lunge toward the crates blocking the flap. I shoved the top one with everything I had, and it wobbled, then tipped. Something inside cracked loudly, maybe glass. I didn't care. I was already clawing at the canvas, pulling so hard it burned my palms. The padlock didn't budge, but the stitching around it did, threads popping, ripping little by little. Behind me, I heard him moving again, fast now. I didn't turn around. I got my fingers under the edge of the flap where the seam had come loose and just yanked with everything I had. Finally, a corner tore open, just enough to shove my arm through and scream again, this time with my head halfway outside. I saw flashes of people passing by, a woman in a red dress, a kid holding a plastic soccer ball. No one stopped. The music was too loud. But then someone noticed. This teenage boy, probably my age, wearing a yellow vendor apron. He looked at me, confused at first, and then his eyes widened when he saw how hard I was struggling to pull the flap apart. He ran over. I don't know what he yelled, but it got attention. Within seconds, 2 more vendors came and one of them started pulling the crates away. The man inside didn't try to stop them. He just stood still, arms at his sides, watching me like he'd already accepted something. When the flap finally tore open and the crates gave way, I bolted out, nearly tripping over my own feet. I remember the boy with the apron asking if I was okay, but I couldn't even answer. I just ran. I didn't stop until I saw my mom 3 aisles away, holding a woven bag and looking around like she'd just realized I wasn't beside her. I didn't tell her the full story until later that night. The police were called, but by the time anyone checked the stall, the man and all his stuff were gone. The torn flap was still there, the crates knocked over, but everything else had vanished. I gave a statement, described his face, the jewelry, the photos. No one recognized him. The vendors nearby said they'd never seen him before. Not once. I still think about those pictures sometimes, about the girls in them. I don't know what he meant when he said I wasn't ready, and I don't want to know. But I keep that amber necklace now. I never wear it. I just keep it in a box in my drawer in case someone else ever recognizes it too. We were halfway through Nevada, somewhere between Ely and Tonopah, cutting through that endless stretch of nothingness you only find in the middle of the desert. It was late July, the kind of heat that makes the asphalt shimmer like it's breathing. My husband, Travis, was driving, and our son, Lucas, he was 9 at the time, had been asleep in the back seat with his headphones on for most of the drive. We weren't in a rush. It was just one of those family road trips you take to break the routine, see the weird roadside attractions, let the kid collect memories. No strict itinerary, just us and the open road. We pulled into a gas station that looked like it had been stuck in time since the 80s. Faded red awning, one rusted ice chest outside, and a dusty vending machine that didn't work. The place had a quiet kind of charm, like a relic. There weren't any other cars around, and there was no music playing, just the dry hum of heat and the crackle of a nearby bug zapper. Travis started filling up the tank while I took Lucas inside with me to grab some snacks and use the bathroom. He was still groggy from his nap, dragging his feet behind me. Inside, it smelled faintly like stale popcorn and motor oil. There was a young woman behind the counter, mid-20s maybe, scrolling through her phone, barely looking up. The shelves were half-stocked, mostly jerky, candy, and off-brand soda. Lucas wandered off toward the fridge section, pointing at something I couldn't quite hear. I told him to wait by the counter while I paid. It couldn't have been more than 2 minutes, maybe less. When I turned back around, he was gone. Just gone. I remember the moment my brain didn't process it right away. I looked behind the candy rack, then behind the door, assuming he was just messing around, but he wasn't. I stepped outside thinking he might have gone to the car to tell Travis something, but Travis looked confused when I asked where Lucas was. He said he hadn't seen him come out. I checked both sides of the building, the bathroom again, even behind the dumpster, calling his name. Nothing. At that point, it stopped feeling like a misunderstanding. My voice started getting sharp. Travis ran inside and demanded to see the security footage. The girl behind the counter seemed startled, like we were accusing her of something, but she eventually called someone, maybe the owner. While we waited, I just kept pacing that small parking lot like maybe, by some miracle, Lucas would step out from behind a wall or a car and smile like it was all a joke. The owner showed up about 20 minutes later, an older man named Daryl with sun-leathered skin and a limp in his right leg. He looked more irritated than concerned when he walked in, like we'd interrupted his lunch. Travis explained what happened and asked again to see the footage. Daryl sighed, muttered something about damn tourists, and disappeared behind a beaded curtain that led to a back office. A few minutes later, he came back and invited us in. The room was small, filled with dusty file boxes and a wall-mounted monitor showing a split screen of 4 outdoor angles. The gas pumps, the lot, the front door, and a side alley. There he was. Lucas. Clear as day, standing near the vending machine outside talking to someone. It was a man, average height, baseball cap, dark hoodie despite the heat. They weren't touching, and it didn't look aggressive at first glance, but the man kept glancing around. Then suddenly he motioned toward the side of the building and Lucas followed him out of frame. My stomach dropped. I started asking Daryl to rewind it, play it again, zoom in, anything, but he just stared at the screen, chewing the inside of his cheek. He finally said flatly, "Never seen that kid before? You sure he came in with you?" I lost it. I pointed at the screen, nearly screaming. I told him I had walked in with Lucas. The cashier had to have seen him. But when we turned to her, she looked at me like I was unhinged. She said I came in alone, swore she never saw a kid. I couldn't even speak for a moment. I just stood there trying to make sense of what I was hearing. Travis looked as stunned as I felt. We called the police right then and there, and Daryl acted like it was an overreaction, but didn't stop us. While we waited, he wouldn't let us take a photo or copy of the footage. He said the officers could review it when they got there. 2 troopers arrived maybe 40 minutes later. I explained everything again, step by step. They asked the cashier, asked Daryl, walked around the lot, even checked the bathroom. Then they went into the back to review the footage. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but I saw one of them make a face, confused, then skeptical. When they came back out, the younger one told us the footage didn't show anything unusual. No boy, no man. Just me going in, and Travis pumping gas. I thought he was joking. I demanded they check again, insisted we had seen it just an hour ago. But they were firm, said they couldn't act on what wasn't there. It's almost impossible to describe the panic that set in. I started questioning myself. Did I actually see Lucas on that tape, or was my mind playing tricks because I was desperate? But Travis saw him too, plain as day. He kept repeating the details. The brand of cap the man wore, how Lucas hesitated before following him, the exact timestamp in the corner of the video. I clung to those details like they were life preservers, refusing to believe they could just vanish. The troopers tried to be gentle, but I could see in their eyes they thought we were either mistaken or making it up. They took our statements and said they'd file a missing person report, but their tone had already shifted to disbelief. We drove back to our motel in silence. The whole ride, I kept staring at Lucas's backpack in the back seat, the blue one with dinosaur patches he'd picked out for this trip. I remembered helping him stuff his favorite book in the side pocket that morning. That night, Travis barely slept, and I just sat on the edge of the bed, scrolling endlessly through local Facebook groups, messaging anyone who might have seen something. It felt like the world had been rewound, and we were the only ones stuck in the wrong version of reality. I called the gas station early the next morning, desperate for any update. Daryl answered, his voice rough with sleep, and told me there was no kid, no tape, nothing to talk about. Refusing to give up, we drove back to the station as soon as the sun came up. The parking lot was just as empty as before. The same faded signs, the same cracked pavement. When I walked in, the cashier from the day before didn't even seem to recognize me. I asked about the footage, and she blinked at me, confused, said they didn't even have cameras installed, just some old monitors hooked up for show. I could hardly breathe. I demanded to see Daryl, but she said he wasn't in yet and didn't know when he'd be back. I felt like I was losing my mind. We sat in the car for hours, hoping someone would turn up, hoping Lucas would come running out from behind the building, or that the man in the hoodie would drive back in like none of this ever happened. At some point, Travis went inside and tried to talk to another employee, but got nowhere. There were no other cars, no visitors, nothing except the heat rising off the concrete and the sound of wind rattling a faded American flag out front. It felt like the place was stuck in a loop, as if time hadn't moved forward at all since yesterday. Later that afternoon, a different police officer called to follow up. She sounded distant, careful, like she was reading from a script. She confirmed that a missing child report had been filed and asked if we wanted to return to the station to review any new information. We agreed, though it felt pointless by then. When we got there, She showed us copies of the station's logs and, this time, some blurry screenshots from a camera pointed at the pumps. But none of them showed Lucas. No sign of the man in the hoodie. Just Travis fueling up and me going in alone, over and over, like the tape was stuck on repeat. I kept pushing for answers. I called the gas station's main office in Reno, only to be told the location hadn't had working security cameras in years. They insisted there were no recent maintenance requests, no staff named Daryl, and no records of a woman matching the cashier's description. I felt a strange kind of emptiness settle over me, heavier than grief, like we'd slipped into some crack between reality and nightmare where logic didn't work anymore. Travis tried to keep things moving. He called every police department between there and Las Vegas, posted flyers, even contacted a couple of those amateur sleuth forums online. Most people just told us to check the cameras again. Weeks went by with nothing, no tips, no sightings, not even a prank call. Lucas's backpack stayed untouched in the back seat, a silent wait everywhere we went. The case went cold so fast it felt like it had never really existed at all. But I remember every second of that day, every detail burned into my mind. The way Lucas's hair stuck up after his nap, the sweat on Travis's forehead, the dry click of the bug zapper outside the station. Sometimes I replay it all in my head at night, wondering what detail I missed, what I could have done differently. I still don't have answers. The official record says Lucas disappeared somewhere outside Ely, Nevada, and the rest of the story, what Travis and I saw, what we lived through, doesn't exist on paper. But I know what happened. I saw my son on that screen. I saw the man in the hoodie. I lived every second of that day, and I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy. Some part of me is still out there, wandering that empty stretch of desert, waiting for a sign. Maybe I always will be. I was flying back to LA after spending 3 straight days in New York finalizing a project that had dragged on way too long. I had barely slept the night before, and I just wanted to get home, shower, and pass out in my own bed. The red eye was half full, mostly solo travelers, business types, a few older folks. I grabbed my window seat near the back of the plane, threw my hoodie on, and hoped the universe would bless me with an empty middle seat. The guy in my row was quiet, kept to himself, didn't even do the usual nod. Fine by me. About an hour after takeoff, I started noticing this guy sitting 2 rows up on the left side. He was maybe late 30s, clean-shaven but kind of gaunt, wearing this oversized olive jacket that looked too warm for a plane. What caught my attention first was that he kept adjusting his backpack under the seat in front of him. Not like once or twice, every 5 minutes or so. He'd lean forward, unzip it just a few inches, peer inside like he expected it to be empty, then zip it back up and sit rigid again. I figured maybe he had meds or anxiety or something, so I tried not to stare. What made me uneasy wasn't just the bag. It was the way he kept muttering to himself. Not full sentences, just these clipped words, low and constant, like he was arguing in his head and occasionally lost the fight out loud. Nobody around him seemed to notice, or maybe they were trying to pretend it wasn't happening. At one point, a flight attendant passed by offering water, and he ignored her completely, eyes forward, fists clenched. She said, "Sir?" twice, then moved on fast. That's when I started paying real attention. About halfway through the flight, he stood up abruptly and walked to the back bathroom, the one right behind my row. I glanced up and made brief eye contact. His expression was blank, but not in a tired way. It was like his face didn't know how to arrange itself. He shut the door, and I figured he'd be a few minutes, maybe just needed to calm down. But 20 minutes passed, then 30. I know because I kept checking the time on the screen in front of me, waiting for that door to open again. People started shifting in their seats. The other bathroom up front had a line forming. One of the attendants knocked once, then again harder. No response. The knocking turned into quiet murmurs between the crew. One of the attendants used the intercom phone near the galley, probably calling the cockpit. A few rows ahead, a man with salt and pepper hair turned around and whispered something to his wife. eyes darting toward the bathroom. The tension started to crawl through the cabin like a slow leak. You know that silent kind of worry, where no one wants to be the first to say they're scared. That's what it felt like. I pulled my hood back and sat up straighter, trying to listen, trying to figure out what the hell was going on behind that door. When he finally came out, after at least 40 minutes, the bathroom reeked. Not like anything rotten or obvious. It was more chemical, metallic. He looked pale, like chalk under bad lighting, and he was breathing through his nose like he was trying hard to stay calm. He didn't look around, didn't apologize. Just walked back to his seat and slumped into it, his jacket bunched up around him like he was bracing for impact. That's when the guy across the aisle from him started coughing. Not a normal cough. Violent, dry, almost choking. The coughing got worse, fast. A woman from the next row pushed her call button. A crew member came rushing over with water, then tried to help the man stand. He staggered into the aisle, looked totally disoriented, and then just collapsed sideways into the seats. Full dead weight. People jumped up, some started shouting. The flight attendant yelled for everyone to stay seated, but the cabin had already cracked open. Panic was spilling out. And the guy in the olive jacket? He didn't even turn around. We heard the captain over the intercom maybe 2 minutes later. Calm voice, but tight. He said there'd been a medical emergency and we were diverting to Denver. No mention of turbulence, no apology for the delay. Just Denver. The crew moved fast. One attendant stayed by the sick passenger, now lying across 3 seats, barely conscious. Another one stood near the guy in the jacket, not saying anything, just watching. And that's when I noticed she wasn't dressed like the rest of them. Same style uniform, but different badge. It had no airline name, just an ID number. When we landed in Denver, we didn't taxi to a regular gate. The plane rolled to a stop on a remote strip away from the terminal, surrounded by emergency vehicles and 2 black SUVs waiting at a distance. The captain told everyone to remain seated. Within seconds, a group of men in dark jackets boarded. No airline logos, just radios, gloves, and serious expressions. They moved fast and quiet, straight to row 12, where the man in the jacket was still sitting, completely still. He didn't resist, didn't speak. Just stood up slowly and let them cuff him right there in front of everyone. While they escorted him out, someone else boarded, another official-looking guy with a clipboard, who pulled the flight crew aside. They talked in hushed voices while passengers craned their necks to hear something, anything. The sick man was removed on a stretcher shortly after, conscious again, but barely. The rest of us just sat there, staring at each other, like we were all stuck in the same fever dream. No one was saying anything loud. People were murmuring, texting, but no one wanted to be the one to ask out loud what we were all thinking. Eventually, we were allowed off the plane, 1 row at a time. No explanations, just a firm request not to record anything or speak to media. At the gate, someone handed out pamphlets from a government health agency, generic stuff about responding to in-flight health incidents and remaining vigilant. It was clear they were trying to downplay everything, but people weren't buying it. A woman in front of me whispered that she overheard one of the crew say the man had been flagged before the flight. He was already being watched before he even boarded. That's what's haunted me most since that night. If they were watching him, why let him on? Why put the rest of us in the air with him? I still don't know what was in that backpack or what he did in that bathroom, but I know the look in that flight attendant's eyes when she stood guard over him. She wasn't trained for hospitality. She was there to contain something. I never saw a follow-up on the news, no reports, no statement, just silence, like it never happened. But I was there, and I think about it every single time I board a plane. The ferry ride out to San Juan had always been on my list, but I finally made it happen last spring, after landing a freelance gig that paid enough for me to justify the trip. I'd been working on a personal photo series, Solitude in the Pacific Northwest. and the idea of capturing that sleepy, fog-draped coastline was something I couldn't shake. I wasn't in a great place mentally, to be honest. A breakup, some family stuff, the usual storm of things. So the trip was as much about getting out of my head as it was about the pictures. I booked a room in a small guest house run by a couple of retirees on the island. Nothing fancy, but it looked clean, and they had good reviews. The plan was simple. Arrive late, sleep, wake up early, and start shooting. The ferry wasn't crowded. Maybe 12 or 15 people total, scattered between the benches and the observation deck. I sat inside near a window streaked with salt, just watching the water churn behind us. That's when I noticed him. A man standing near the railing, not doing much, no phone, no bag, just standing completely still, both hands tucked into a faded green parka. I wouldn't have thought much of him, but something about the way he was looking around caught my attention. He wasn't scanning the view or checking his watch like the others. He kept glancing at the people, at me, mostly. Eyes that lingered just a little too long. I looked away, assuming he might just be another solo traveler lost in thought. When we docked, everyone moved off pretty quickly. I lagged behind to grab my duffel and adjust my tripod bag, and when I stepped onto the pier, he was already off to the side. Still without a bag, still not walking toward anything in particular. He didn't make eye contact this time, but I felt his head turn as I passed. The road split just past the dock, and I took the left toward the guest house. No one followed, at least not that I noticed. The walk was about 10 minutes in the dark, and the only sounds were gravel under my boots and the occasional rustle of wind through the trees. By the time I reached the house, a single-story place tucked behind tall hedges, I'd pushed the guy out of my mind. The hosts had already gone to bed, but they'd left a key in the mailbox as promised. Inside, the place smelled like old wood and something vaguely citrusy, like cleaner that hadn't quite worn off yet. My room was small but cozy, with a double bed, a desk facing the window, and a heater that ticked softly when I turned it on. I showered, ate a protein bar, and spent about an hour reviewing shots on my camera before finally lying down. I hadn't even drawn the curtains yet when I noticed movement outside. Barely a shift, like someone leaning just out of view. The street lamp across the road cast enough of a glow to light the edge of the yard. That's when I saw him, standing behind a thin tree trunk, head angled up toward my window. Same coat, same man, just standing there. I froze. For a second, I just lay there, not blinking, barely breathing. I thought maybe I was imagining it. Maybe it was a shadow or the way the wind moved the tree. But then he shifted. His body leaned slightly, like he was adjusting his footing, and I saw the faintest glint of his eyes under the brim of his hood. He was looking directly at me. I sat up slowly and reached for the curtain cord, yanking it closed in one motion. My heart was hammering. I stayed by the window, holding the fabric shut, waiting. After a minute or two, I forced myself to peek out again, moving just an inch of the curtain aside. The man was gone. Just the empty road, a single moth fluttering near the lamp and the tree still swaying in the breeze. I didn't sleep much that night. Every creak of the floorboards, every gust of wind brushing the siding made me sit up and listen. I kept the lights on and my camera on the nightstand. At one point, I even considered leaving, walking back toward the dock and just waiting for the next ferry. Except the dock would be closed, and it was at least a mile away, through wooded back roads with no lights and no signal. So I stayed, and in the morning I told myself it had to be a coincidence. Maybe he was just another guest. Maybe he took the same road as me and kept walking. I even checked around the house for any fresh footprints or signs that someone had been standing there, but the gravel had been smoothed by the wind and dew. No trace of him. I left early to shoot the beaches and cliffs before sunrise. The island was quiet, wrapped in that heavy mist that seems to eat sound. I tried to shake off the night before and focus on my project. Few of the shots came out decent, but I couldn't ignore the weird feeling in my stomach, like something was still trailing behind me. I stopped by a small diner around 11 a.m., and when I asked the waitress if there were any other inns nearby besides the main ones in town, She paused before answering. Said most people who come in on the last ferry already have places booked. Said it's rare for someone to be wandering the island without gear or plans. I didn't ask more. I didn't want to sound paranoid. That night, the air felt heavier, like the sky was pushing down on everything. I tried to act normal, edited some shots, texted a couple of friends, and locked every door and window I could find. I even wedged a chair under the doorknob like I'd seen in movies. Around 2 a.m., I heard footsteps on the porch. Not animals, not branches. Actual, deliberate footsteps. Slow, one after the other, directly outside the guest room door. I sat up in bed. The sound so clear it felt like it was inside the room. My phone still had no signal, and I realized with a punch of fear that I had forgotten to check the back door. The hosts had a second entrance through the kitchen, and I hadn't tested it earlier. I got up, creeping barefoot down the hallway, every floorboard betraying me with a small crack. The kitchen smelled faintly of brewed coffee and old pine cabinets. I moved in slow, controlled steps, keeping my breath shallow. The back door was in the corner near the pantry, with a small square window in the upper half, covered only by a thin curtain. I reached for the doorknob and gently turned it, unlocked. I felt a jolt in my chest. Slowly, I pulled the curtain aside just enough to see outside. At first, nothing. Then my eyes adjusted to the darkness, and there he was again, standing at the edge of the backyard, just beyond the porch light's reach, in that same green coat, still, not moving, just watching. I didn't open the door. I backed away, locked it with a firm click, and then scrambled around the kitchen looking for something to brace against it. There was a broom, a wooden stool, and a box of glass soda bottles. None of it useful. I grabbed a knife from the block out of pure panic instinct, though I doubted it would help much. I went back to the guest room, this time not even bothering with the lights. I sat by the window, curtain cracked just enough to watch the road. I wanted to see him leave, but he didn't. He just stood there, for almost half an hour. Eventually, he turned, not toward the road but into the woods behind the property. And then he was gone again. The next morning, I packed everything and walked to the host's front door. They were surprised to see me so early, but when I mentioned the man, their faces changed. The husband, Carl, scratched his head and said there'd been weird sightings before. Folks seeing someone outside, but no tracks, no evidence. He said some blamed local homeless, others said it was just paranoia from being isolated. But there was something in his tone, like even he didn't buy his own explanation. I left that morning and took the first ferry out. Didn't look back. I never did finish the photo series. When I reviewed the images later, I noticed something in one of the shoreline shots. Far in the background, behind some driftwood, was a figure in a green parka. Tiny, but definitely there. I've never been back to the island. People ask me why I don't do solo trips anymore, and I usually just say, I got tired of traveling alone. But the truth is, I think he chose me. Not because I did anything wrong, not because I talked to him, but because I noticed him. Maybe that was all it took. Just that glance on the ferry, just long enough for him to decide I was worth following. My girlfriend Alyssa and I had been going through a rough couple of months. Nothing dramatic. Just that slow kind of emotional drift that creeps in when you're both drowning in work and barely talking at dinner. So when she found a listing for a secluded cabin tucked deep in the Colorado Rockies, I jumped on it. It looked like the kind of place people posted about when they wanted to brag about disconnecting. Wooden beams, floor-to-ceiling windows, snow-covered trees in every direction. We left Denver on a Friday morning in early March, tossed our phones in the glove box, and told each other we'd spend the weekend reading, cooking, and actually being present. The road up to the place was no joke. About 6 miles of winding gravel with zero signage, and snow already beginning to spit from a dull, metallic sky. When we finally pulled up to the cabin, it was smaller than the photos had made it seem, but not in a bad way. Just quieter. There were no neighbors in sight, no tire tracks in the snow behind us, and no ambient noise except wind and the occasional groan of tall pines swaying. The owner had left the keys in a lockbox, along with a note on the fridge that said, "Welcome. Cell signal is weak here. Use the landline if needed. Wood for the stove is out back." That first night, we cooked pasta on the gas stove and opened a bottle of wine by the fire. Alyssa found an old book of ghost stories on the shelf and started reading one aloud, half laughing through the creepy parts. By midnight, we were bundled under the quilt in the loft bedroom, the kind of heavy silence around us that city people like us weren't used to. I remember lying awake longer than usual, just listening. At one point, there was this distinct crunching sound, like footsteps on gravel, but it was rhythmic, slow, and only lasted a few seconds. I waited for Alyssa to say something, but she didn't stir. I convinced myself it was an animal and eventually fell asleep. The next morning, I stepped outside to grab firewood and nearly slipped. The snow had hardened into a crust overnight, and right near the front steps were muddy footprints, boot prints, full-sized. They trailed along the side of the cabin, paused under the kitchen window, and then curved back toward the trees. Alyssa came out behind me, half awake, and froze when she saw them. "Did you go outside last night?" she asked. I hadn't. I could tell she didn't quite believe me. We followed the prints with our eyes until they disappeared into the woods, and I felt something tighten in my chest. Not fear exactly, but unease, like we'd missed something we should have noticed hours ago. Back inside, things got weirder. While Alyssa made coffee, I went to take a shower. The mirror over the sink was fogged up from the heater running, and at first I didn't notice anything unusual. But then, right in the center, near the bottom edge, there was this little smudge. I leaned in. It was a handprint. A small one. Way too small to be mine or Alyssa's. 5 fingers, faint but clearly there, like someone had touched the mirror while it was warm. I called Alyssa in and we both just stared at it for a while. Neither of us said what we were thinking out loud, but it didn't feel like something you could just ignore. I tried brushing it off with a towel and the print disappeared, but now everything had a different weight to it. The silence, the creaks in the walls, the way the wind tapped at the windows like it wanted in. We checked the doors and windows again, locked, nothing broken. Still, Alyssa suggested we try calling the owner, just to ask if there were any weird history with the place or maybe pranksters in the area. That's when we realized both our phones had 0 signal. No bars, no internet, nothing. The landline on the wall? Dead. Not even a dial tone. I jiggled the cable in the back, thinking maybe it was loose. It wasn't. We stood there, both of us still in pajamas, staring at the silent phone like it might come back to life if we just waited long enough. Alyssa broke the tension by half joking, "This is how every horror movie starts." I laughed, but it felt forced. The weather was already getting worse, big wet flakes falling sideways outside, and a thick layer of snow swallowing up the road we'd driven in on. I stepped onto the porch again and looked toward the woods. The boot prints were already half covered. We'd be stuck here by nightfall. That wasn't just a possibility, it was obvious now. To keep ourselves busy, we built a fire and tried to act normal. Alyssa read, and I kept pacing, checking the windows like I expected to see someone standing out there. I couldn't get that handprint out of my head. It wasn't like it was high up on the mirror. It was about chest level for a kid. But there were no kids here. No one. And I know it hadn't been there the night before. I'd brushed my teeth right in front of that mirror. Same spot. Around 4 p.m., the light started fading. That mountain kind of darkness where the snow glows blue and everything else sinks into shadows. And that's when we heard something on the roof. It started as a scraping sound, like something dragging across the roof above the loft. We both looked up at the same time. It wasn't loud, but it was deliberate, slow, and irregular, as if someone was crawling across the shingles with their palms. Alyssa whispered, "What is that?" And for once, I didn't have a theory. I grabbed the fire poker and a flashlight, told her to stay downstairs, and climbed up the narrow wooden steps to the loft. The ceiling sloped low and there was no attic access, just a vent in the corner that led outside. The sound had stopped by the time I got up there, but I swear, I could feel something up there. Like when someone's behind you but you can't explain why you know it. After maybe 10 minutes of holding my breath and listening to absolutely nothing, I came back down. We locked the door to the loft behind us. I know how that sounds. It's not like it would stop anyone from getting in, but it made us feel a little less exposed. The storm hit full force around 6. Wind slamming against the windows, snow piling up fast. Alyssa wanted to try driving out anyway, but I wasn't about to get us killed sliding off a mountain road in the dark. So we huddled in the living room, lights dimmed, fireplace crackling, both of us straining our ears for anything that didn't belong. Around 9, something did knock. Not on the front door, on the kitchen window. Just 2 slow, dull taps. We didn't move. I didn't even breathe. Alyssa had tears in her eyes, and I remember thinking, I need to keep her calm, no matter what. The knocking didn't come again. But the next morning, when the storm cleared enough for us to dig out the car, we found something that still messes with my head. On the window glass, just above the smudged condensation, was another handprint. Same size as the one on the bathroom mirror. But this time there was a faint face-shaped smear next to it, like someone or something had leaned close and watched us. We left that morning, didn't even wait to clean the place. Alyssa never wants to talk about it. I emailed the owner afterward, asked if they'd ever had issues with trespassers or if there were kids nearby. He replied a day later, "We've owned that cabin for 12 years. There's no one for at least 5 miles in any direction, and we don't rent to families with small children." That was it. I don't have answers. We never went back. I still wake up some nights hearing footsteps on gravel, even though we're back in the city. I keep telling myself it was just some twisted prank. But deep down, I don't believe that.